everyone. This is the Buttercup podcast where we talk about early childhood topics. I'm so excited today because I have Dr. Ilene Schwartz with me. Dr. Ilene Schwartz is a professor in the area of special education at the University of Washington, and she's the director of the Haring Center for Inclusive Education at the University of Washington. Dr. Ilene Schwartz earned her Ph.D. in child and developmental psychology from the University of Kansas, and she is a board certified behavior analyst, BCBA-D. And the D stands for Ph.D., right? Dr. Schwartz?
Correct, doctoral level.
Doctoral level BCBA, which that's awesome. It's so amazing. Dr. Schwartz has an active research and professional training agenda with primary interests in the areas of autism, inclusive education, professional ethics, and the sustainability of educational interventions. Dr. Schwartz is the director of the Project Data, a model preschool program for children with autism that has been in operation since 1997 and was started as a model demonstration project with OSEP funding, Office of Special Education Programs funding. She's currently working on projects to improve the quality of inclusive services for students with disabilities and strategies that can be used to improve access to services for young children with autism spectrum disorders in under-resourced areas. Thank you so much for being here today, Dr. Schwartz.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
Well, and I just read a little bit about you, but I was wondering if you could share with us how you got started in the field of education.
Great. I love to tell this story. So when I was in high school, I took a psychology class, and we had an option of doing something that they called field psychology. And so for the second semester of my senior year in high school, I got to work in a classroom with children that at the time they called them childhood aphasics. I don't even think, I'm sure we don't use that terminology anymore. And this was 1976. So it was right after ID, PL 94-142 passed and IDEA started. So special education, and it was certainly not what it is today. And so I spent my afternoons working with these really amazing little children who I think just had never learned language. And I think now we probably would have identified them as children with autism. But I loved it. I just loved it. And I had already been accepted to college, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do. But then I thought I wanted to be a speech pathologist. So I started, I went to the college I'd been accepted to, which was the liberal arts college. And I had a really awful advisor. And he said, well, you can't do that here. We're a liberal arts college. You need to go to a state school to do that. So after 2 years, I transferred to the University of California at Santa Barbara, and I got my undergraduate degree in special education. And then, in speech and hearing sciences. And then I decided that I wanted to work before I went to graduate school. And I ended up working at a place called the May Institute, which was a school for kids with autism that used behavioral strategies, and it changed my life. I said, this is a way of thinking about the world and working with people that makes sense to me. And that's how I started out.
That is so awesome. And I just got to see you in February at our conference for early intervention research. And we got to catch up over breakfast. And I went to the University of Washington for undergrad, but I never got to have you as a professor. I wish I did. One of the things that happened when we were at that conference is I was sitting by the fireplace on my way to the airport, and Dr. Mickey Ostrowski sat down next to me, and we were visiting, and you and her and Dr. Judy Carta got recognition at the conference and brought up on stage because the work that you guys do. And I mean, you guys are such pioneers in our field and queens. It was so awesome, you guys. And so she and I started talking, and I asked her, what has been the highlight of your career so far? What has been so exciting? And one of the things she talked about was mentoring students. And when I think of our great mentors in early intervention, you and her and many others come to mind. And I was like, I'm going to do a series on my podcast about mentoring. And so you just described so many beautiful places and schools that you worked at and the May Institute. And you have had probably many mentors along the way. Was there one in particular that just kind of stands out that brings a smile to your face and that really changed your life?
Well, I have been really, really fortunate in working with amazing people throughout my life. And a- and that's been, I mean, I've been very, very fortunate. And I think that I've had mentors who have helped me in different parts of my life, you know. So like I was able to work with Don Bear. He was my advisor when I was in graduate school. And and he was just an amazing, brilliant, kind man. But he wasn't the kind of mentor that, you know, he wasn't a soft and fuzzy, you know, mentor asking you how you're doing today. He wasn't that kind of mentor. But he was a nice, good man who believed in science um and it really made me think, I think more so after I left the University of Kansas. One of the things that he taught me is that you can be a great scientist and a good leader, and a nice person. Because I sometimes at the university, you don't always meet people who believe you can do both. And he was someone who could do both. And you know, I got to work with Susan Fowler, who again was such a great leader and so committed to applied research. I got to work with Judy Carta again, who really, you know, thinks about how do we serve children in underserved areas, and how do we make sure that every child has the right to a free and appropriate public education, regardless of whether or not they have a disability, but everyone should have a free and appropriate public education. So that those have been people that, you know, while I was, all those folks were at the University of Kansas, and I had all the opportunity to work with them while I was there. Um, and then when I moved to UW, I actually um, met a woman named Leslie Olswang, who was in the speech and hearing department. And I actually met her at a new faculty issue. Um, uh, she was there just uh, she had been working at the UW for a long time, and she was a great mentor to me because you know, as you know, when you are at it, when you're a faculty member, there are always so many demands on you, and there's really something about learning how to maintain your you know, keep your North Star true, but then do what you need to do to be successful and at the university. And she was really so helpful in kind of helping me learn about the university environment and the context. And, you know, when I think back to especially Judy Carta, because of I worked with her at Juniper Gardens Children's Project, which was a really transformational experience for me. You know, what it taught me was that you need to create the context in which you want to work. And so if that means that you want to work in a context where um, people are treated nicely and you care about each other and you develop good and just relationships in addition to doing really high quality work, then you have to build that, and you can build that. And I feel like that was something that I was able to do. Um, and um, and uh, and it's been a fantastic journey, because I really do think my, you know, I've been because I'm retiring, the reason all three of us were brought up on stage is because we're all retiring. And when I think about when I retire, you know, what have I left behind? And I think about my students, that's what I've left behind. My students will impact their students and the families with whom they work. And that's how things change. And that's been very meaningful to me.
That is awesome. Thank you. And thank you for your service to the field, and congratulations on your upcoming retirement.
Thank you.
And all the exciting plans you have for the next steps and new adventures. Uh, so you've been mentored by others, and you've been a mentor. So you've been on both sides, a mentee and a mentor. Has there been any aha moments or things that have happened that helped you develop your philosophy on mentoring?
Well, I was very fortunate at the University of Kansas. When I was there, and I think they still adhere to this, they had a method of mentoring that they referred to as the junior colleague model. And so so our faculty really thought of us as junior colleagues. And I never felt taken advantage. I hear stories from other people who talk about being a doctoral student who was not treated well. I never experienced that. And I feel like I was always respected, and my ideas were respected. And, I was certainly given feedback. And when I did stupid stuff, I got good feedback on that. Um, but I think that idea of treating everyone in the room as a colleague, and what it does is it flattens the hierarchy. And universities, I think, are about the most hierarchical place. I've worked most of my life in a university, but they are very hierarchical. And and I and I think the more that we can do to flatten that hierarchy, and it doesn't matter if who comes up with the idea, if we can implement it as a group, that's fantastic. And the person who came up with the idea, whether they're the doc student or a undergraduate or a data collector, they should get the credit for the idea. And we all together can make that idea come to life. A very smart person that I worked with, she was the principal at the Haring Center for a long time. Her name was Jennifer Annabelle. And she used to say that all of us have areas in which we can improve and areas in which we excel. And just like we think about when we write an IEP for a student, everyone has strengths and everyone has areas where they need to improve. And that is whether you're a preschool student in a developmental preschool class or a faculty member. We all have areas of strength and areas in which we can improve. And I think about that in the work that I do with my students, and also in the work I do with my colleagues, because the fact that we bring different strengths to the table is what makes the table interesting. If we all brought the same strength, it would be pretty boring and we wouldn't get as much stuff done.
Yes, I love that. The junior colleague model sounds amazing. And I love what you said about flattening the hierarchy and treating everyone that is part of the mentorship as equals, and with kindness and care, and taking care and nurturing those relationships. Well, a lot of people that listen to this podcast are my students. And do you have any advice for students or early or emerging career people who are looking for a mentor? Like, how do you find a mentor? I know like the junior colleague model maybe is a formal way, but are there informal or other strategies that you've seen people use, or maybe you've used in creating mentorships?
Well, so your students are very lucky to have you as a as an advisor and a teacher and a mentor. So first, good for them. You know, I think that, you know, I don't know that I've ever looked for a mentor as much as I've developed relations with people who then they become mentors. Um, and, but I think if I wanted to develop, I think the way to develop relationships and to meet people who can become potential mentors are to, besides ways like graduate programs and things like that, um, is to get involved. And like you said, go to conferences like the CRI conference is a great example. Participate in committees at in organizations like DEC. I know that DEC has the Division of Early Childhood of the Council for Exceptional Children. I know that DEC has um, or has had in the past a mentorship program. Universities often have mentorship programs. And, I think that when you do things that you're interested in, you'll find other people who are doing those things as well. And um, and they may become really important people in your life. If you call them a mentor, that's great. You may define the relationship differently. I think that mentorship is a very important kind of relationship. And I don't think that you can appoint someone and say, you're my mentor, or, there's an official mentorship capacity there. But I think for it to really take on the um, depth and value of what we often think about as mentorship, that has to develop somewhat naturally, because I can be appointed to work with someone, but we may not share similar values. I may not, respect the way that they treat their colleagues. There are all kinds of things that can be going on there. So I think that good mentorship relationships develop authentically, and they develop through the work. And you need to find people who are doing things that you believe in and that you think are important. And then I think mentorship relationships develop out of that.
Yes. Very cool. Thank you. Yes. Uh, as you kind of reflect now on your career and your starting new adventures, is there a highlight or moments that that stand out that were rewarding for you?
Well, every time I get to put a doctoral student, that's so rewarding. It just feels so fantastic. And because it's such a concrete example of this person's work, and that always feels great. But I think I have two examples that I'll share with you that neither of them are putting a doctoral student. But one, I've been working on a project called Project Data, stands for Developmentally Appropriate Treatment for Autism. We started it in 1997 and it's still going. And one of the reasons we started that project was that we really, it's evidence, it's an early intensive behavioral intervention program for children with autism that's based in schools. And one of the key components is that children spend at least half a day in an inclusive classroom. So it kind of blends all the things I love: inclusive education, participation, applied behavior analysis. And one of the reasons that we started that is we wanted to make sure that children weren't denied access to high quality intervention for autism because their families couldn't support or find home-based program. And when we started this program in 1997, there were no insurance-funded programs. So the landscape was quite different. So we published a manual for this, and it didn't get published till 2017 because I'm not very good at meeting my deadlines. And when I went to DEC and the first time I saw the book published on the Brooks display, it was so amazing. I still remember that feeling. It was just like this surge of joy of all these years and all these people I'd worked with and all these amazing families I'd worked with and these great kids that I've met along the way. And it seemed just incredible to me. That was one amazing bit of joy. And then the other really meaningful experience I just had recently, and that was I've been the director of the Haring Center for Inclusive Education for many years, and we just completed a very large renovation project. We had moved out of the building for about 2 years, and so that they could completely renovate the building. And when we moved back in, we had an open house, and we had people, children, families, staff members for, the program's been in existence for about 60 years. And we've had people that had worked there 50 years ago who came to the program, to the open house. We had children who, when I worked with them and they were 2 and 3, and now they had graduated from college and were, exploring the world and doing amazing things. And it was so joyful to see people come back into the building and talk about the great experiences that they had had there. And that, as they said, really filled my bucket.
Oh, that is so beautiful. I love that. And I love your book. The project data book is in my office at work. And I can see it right now. And I think, when you look at someone's CV, their curriculum vita, it's a reflection of their life. But when it's just one line or a couple lines on their CV, but it is hours and hours of blood, sweat, and tears and writing and super hard work. And when you get to see that book be born, and it's like, oh my gosh, it's got a spine and pages and you never know who's reading it. I mean, the user experience is so unknown, but
Right.
you know from your end of things how much went into it. And it is such an incredible moment the first time you open up something like that, like a book or a manuscript, and it's gotten to the final stage. That is awesome. Well, thank you. And thank you for doing the project data. I think the work that you do has influenced so many people, and with your mentoring and the work that you do with your students and colleagues is such a wonderful contribution. And thank you so much, Dr. Schwartz. So when we were having breakfast that day, you started to add up, and it was a lot of people that you hooded and helped them get their PhDs. When you think about mentoring all of the doctoral students, was there anything that lessons learned for people who want to be mentors, things that worked or didn't work, or that you think, oh, I would definitely do it that way again next time?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. So I have mentored a lot of doctoral students, and I think most people have enjoyed their experience with me. I'm sure there are people who have not enjoyed that. So, and that's okay. I think I have a way of mentoring, and I think, I learned that from my mentors, which is that I think you get out of a graduate degree what you put into a graduate degree. So I am not a mentor who's going to um, remind people of deadlines and things like that. But I am a mentor who is available when people need my assistance. So I'm happy to read as many drafts of a paper as you want. Um, but I'm not going to tell you that you need to write the paper. Um, and I think that that's worked for me. And I think it's worked for most of my students. And I think about in the last few years, I've been doing writing that I enjoy more than any other time in my career. And it's great because I've been writing with former students. And it's been so rewarding for me to see these amazing women turn into really fantastic scholars and not junior colleagues, real fabulous, wonderful colleagues. And it's been the best writing experience ever. And so I think what I do works, it works for some people. And again, you know, one of the things I encourage my students to do is to tell me if things aren't working for them. And now I say that and I understand that there's an implicit power imbalance in a relationship between a supervisor or a advisor and a student. All I can do is acknowledge that and try to say, I still want you to tell me. And if this isn't working, let's figure out how to make it work. I think about instruction, whether it's instruction for graduate students or for children with autism, as with the idea that student failure is instructional failure. So if a child with a disability is not learning what we want them to learn, then we need to figure out a different way to teach them. If a doctoral student is not succeeding, we need to think about a different way to teach them, whether it's a different program, a different advisor, a different meeting schedule. But good instruction is good instruction, and good relationships between students and learners are important. So
Thank you. And one of the things that you said was to, when you're thinking about a mentorship, have your interest guide when you're seeking for a mentor. And you mentioned DEC and the Division for Early Childhood. This is just a little plug. Has a program that I got involved with a couple of years ago called Decide, DECIDE. And those letters mean something, but I'm not quite sure what the whole acronym is. And what my experience is they matched me up with someone from the university where I went for my Ph.D. And so I was the mentor and the doctoral student was my mentee. And it was a formal arrangement. And it was so neat because, like what you're saying with writing, we did a writing project together. So there was mentoring going on with writing. There was mentoring going on with navigating a doctoral program. There was mentoring going on with her entering the job market and what that looks like if she wanted to do a postdoc or go for a job as an assistant professor. So there was so many different things that we would talk about, but we had ongoing meetings and we did a project together and we just got done publishing it and it's in press right now. So that was a formal program through our professional home, the Division for Early Childhood of the Council for Exceptional Children. And many professional organizations have that, and it can be such a supportive opportunity for both the mentee and the mentor. I think everyone benefits from it, and I got so much out of it too. And one of the fun things was learning about my alma mater and changes that are happening. So it was kind of like walk down memory lane because she would tell me about, oh, this building there, or the old parking lot that used to be the tennis courts and is now a brand new building sitting on it. Yeah. Well, is there any other comments or things you want to say about mentoring or about uh, early childhood special education or early intervention?
Well, I think the thing that I think about mentors is that they can be anywhere. You know, they don't have to be, you know, the person who's published the most papers ever in, you know, early childhood special education. You know, they don't have to be the person who's brought in the most grant money ever. You know, sometimes they're a preschool teacher or some, you know, because there's lots of parts of our lives. And I think one of the questions that I get so many times from my mentees is, you know, how do you achieve balance? And I keep telling them, if I knew how to do that, I would win the Nobel Peace Prize, because I don't know anyone who really does achieve balance. But I do have models of people in my life who are better at it than others. And I think that that's a really important thing, because I don't know what balance means to you or to anyone else. But, you know, we have to make sure that we all have things in our lives besides the things that we put on our Vita. And whether that's family or pets or gardening or religion or exercise or whatever that is, we have to have things that um, make us whole, because I think the more more whole we are, the better we are at doing our job. And um, and so I think about that as well. And we really want to make sure that um, that that are that we think about, and we think about that in our students as well. You know, that you know, what I understand that what you bring to the table, they understand what I bring to the table is more than the data that we're talking about today. And the fact that your life experience and my life experience may be quite different may help us analyze some of these data in different ways. And that's helpful. But also then when we leave here, that we all have both opportunities and responsibilities that are different. And we need to think about those things as well.
Thank you. Yes. Well, how can listeners follow you?
Well, I am on LinkedIn.
That's awesome. And I know uh, several years ago, I came to the Haring Center and I got to have a tour and learn more about it. Can people stop by University of Washington and schedule a tour at the Haring Center if they're in Seattle?
It's Haring Center, Haring Center, CENTER.org. So haringcenter.org. Don't just stop by, but you can go to the haringcenter.org website and request a tour. And we'd love to have people visit.
Very cool. Thank you, Dr. Ilene Schwartz.
Well, thank you, Marissa. It was great to see you. And I hope our paths cross soon.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Take care.
You too. Take care.